Welcome back to Cyber Focus, your source for international business information. I'm your host, Christopher Rice, and our guest today for our first feature back in the academic semester is Mary Stylidi. Dr. Stylidi works in the Greek Ministry of Education, Research, and Religious Affairs as special education personnel. Currently, she is deployed as an external expert in the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees, UNHCR, in Aleppo, Syria, in addition to a role as Regional Commissioner for Unaccompanied Minor Refugees in Greece on behalf of UNHCR. Dr. Stylidi holds several master's degrees and a Doctor of Science in Disaster Psychology from the UN University of Peace. She is a certified international rescuer and a delegate in the International Committee of the Red Cross, with experience that has had her working with vulnerable populations around the world. Today, Dr. Stylidi will discuss her postdoc research on Human Devastation Syndrome in Syria and the effects on education and poverty as the country seeks to reconstruct. Mary, thank you so much for joining us today. Pleasure.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Rice. It is an honor for me to be here and speak about a very huge and serious issue in cyber series. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. On behalf of Indiana University, we're so happy to have you.
Thank you.
Mary, your research takes you into the heart of Aleppo, which has seen some of the most intense battles during the Syrian civil war. This is very far from a safe or easy place to do research right now. Will you tell us why you're there?
First of all, I was deployed there by UNHCR in order to coordinate humanitarian aid and refugee issues as well in the camps of Jordan mainly. After being 4 years there, I decided to conduct my postdoc research, which is on Human Devastation Syndrome, a new term of a mental disorder that refers to the human pain after being diagnosed with PTSD. That's the post-traumatic stress disorder. It is an extension of PTSD, and it refers to the human pain that becomes a devastation by the person who suffers from that syndrome. And because of this devastation, this person becomes quite angry, and it wants to either to be killed or kill people. And our research now focus on children, Syrian children mainly, who suffer from that syndrome, and they want to join terrorist groups. We try to associate this syndrome with terrorism.
Well, Mary, can you give us more of a background on Human Devastation Syndrome? Where does the term itself come from? And what makes it different from what we know as PTSD?
There is a main difference between PTSD and Human Devastation Syndrome. First of all, this term was found during the Syrian war by a neuropsychiatrist, Dr. Mohammed Hassan. Its mainly difference with PTSD is that first the person has to be diagnosed with PTSD, and
comes after PTSD.
Yes, it is an extension of PTSD that goes further to turning PTSD into a devastation that this person has no feelings, has no hope, has nothing to invest in emotionally anymore, and it turns to a person that the only thing that wants to do is to harm himself or others.
Well, Mary, many of these youth arrive at camps. They're unaccompanied, they're completely alone. they don't have educational opportunities to help with human devastation syndrome. What is this like for them? What help do they need?
First of all, they have to deal with the conditions that these camps have, which are awful. There are high rates of poverty, there are high rates of exploitation, and they definitely cannot attend school. They do not have access to medicine as well, to healthcare. And there are no people to talk with. The main need that they express is to go back to school, to attend classes, to have education, to act as students, because this is something that they think it is a continuum of their life, of their being. They want to become students again. And this is why I'm here. I conduct research on education about a comparison between the education that children in Holocaust had and the Syrian children have now. And we try to set the education issue as the fourth pillar of humanitarian aid, after food, shelter, and medicine.
Yeah.
This is what they need. It's not what we want to do, but it is an essential need that they express, and we are here. I'm here for them.
Mm-hmm. What sorts of opportunities exist for them right now in terms of education, those who are in the camps?
They attend mobile schools.
Mobile schools?
Yes, because there are no permanent schools in the camps. There is not enough staff, educational staff, to support permanent schools. But the other reason is that they don't have time to attend schools or classes because they have to work. They have to do every kind of action in order to support themselves, in order to survive, or to support their families as well. So education is a kind of losing its essential purpose for these kids.
Yeah, and so you find this in the camps in Jordan. From your research, would you expect to see similar cases in Turkey or in other countries with similar camps in terms of education?
I have already visited Turkey and Lebanon as well. They're somehow at the same level of education. It is a huge number of children. This is one of the main characteristics of the Syrian war. Many children are affected in many terms and diverse terms. So it is difficult to coordinate all of their needs. Some of them are addressed, some others are not. And the education is not addressed in high level.
Yeah. Well, it might appear to some that when a conflict subsides, and the conflict in Syria subsided in a few ways and others not so much, but people think that those affected go back to their ordinary business when the conflict does subside. When Syrian youth in these camps do leave, where do they usually go, do you find?
First of all, we have to consider that the Syrian war is one of the bloodiest wars that humanity has ever experienced. It is a very brutal war, and it's not the fact that a fighter wants to kill another fighter. The main characteristic of this war is that the combatants die with a very brutal way. They're tortured. until their death. So we can imagine that after 7 years of that civil war, that it has become an international war nowadays, people have seen so many brutalities that they are traumatized. When they will go back, and they started going back, as we see in Aleppo, they have to deal with their trauma as well as starting small businesses in order to act as civilians and as human beings as well. This is somehow difficult and very tricky as well. The most essential thing that this society needs now is entrepreneurship, and mainly social entrepreneurship. This will form the basis to start a business again, small business at the start.
Yes.
This is going to be quite helpful for them in order to overcome from their trauma and continue their life. Syria used to have a very good level of business, of education. It used to be a very rich country as well. And these people lost what they had.
Everything.
Yes. So they have to start over again. And this is quite difficult.
Mm-hmm. Well, Mary, speaking of the entrepreneurial spirit, that leads us to our last question. What are the key takeaways you'd like the business community to know about your research? And how can they help as part of social responsibility?
I think business has to offer many things to these children. First of all, they want to be educated in order to find jobs, in order to start their lives again, in order to become citizens, purposeful citizens for their society. They already know the term of entrepreneurship, and they want to follow this path and become citizens that they will build their society in the right way, with the appropriate basis and a more sustainable one. So the business market has to offer many things to these children, because in terms of the Human Devastation Syndrome, it can act as a therapeutic tool as well, and recruit these children in order to act as human beings and citizens in the near future.
Build a better future.
Yeah, and more sustainable one.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Mary. It's been a
Thank
pleasure
you.
to have
Thank you. It was my honor as well. Thank you.
That's all for this edition of Cyber Focus. Thank you for tuning in. If you have any comments or suggestions for future topics, please let us know at CIBER, that's CIBER, cyber, @indiana.edu.